This is getting better by the minute.
Welcome back to part 2 of my kidney transplant story. When we left off in part 1, it was June 2003, and we had arrived at the transplant center the night before the transplant was scheduled, because they always want to do some blood tests and such to make sure nothing's changed. Well, we couldn't go ahead with the transplant because my blood lab results showed that I had too few red blood cells. In other words, my blood was too thin and would not have clotted well enough, and could have caused me to bleed too much during the surgery.
You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.
Huh.
So they sent me home. We had the transplant rescheduled for July 4th, as a matter of fact, or July 3rd, as a matter of fact. And in the meantime, they gave me a whole bunch of intravenous iron and Procrit to build up my red blood cells. Well, they did an excellent job, because the night before the transplant, again, we showed up and they did the tests, and there was a problem. Guess what? My blood was too thick. They built it up too much. I had too many red blood cells. So they didn't know if they were going to be able to do the surgery or not. But rather than send us home, what they did is that night, over the course of several hours, they sucked a bunch of blood out of me and were able to thin my blood enough to get it to just the right consistency that they could go ahead with the surgery. So the next day they did. And I woke up on July 4th, 2003 with a new kidney. I also woke up with a catheter up my urethra, which is not a pleasant thing. And but things had gone extremely well in the surgery, as well as they could have. The first thing they wanted to check was to see if I began urinating. The sooner you begin urinating, the more you urinate after a kidney transplant, the better it is, because that shows that the new kidney has started working. Well, mine did. I started working right away, and they were extremely pleased with that. They told me also that as soon as possible, they wanted me to get up out of the bed, and they wanted me to walk, or at the very least sit, as much as possible. Apparently, for some reason, the more you walk and sit and don't lay down in bed right after a kidney transplant, the better and faster it heals. So I told them I'm willing to do whatever they tell me to do. So that's what I did. I got up and I walked around and around and around that ward as much as possible. And it must have worked, because there were zero problems, and they let me go home after 3 days in the hospital, which was pretty good. I got back home, and of course I had a big Frankenstein scar on my right hand side, which is where they placed the new kidney. And it was pretty painful, but I think the biggest cause of pain was they use these huge staples, and the staples themselves pull and tug and rub against the raw incision area, and I think that's what caused most of the pain, because once they finally took those out, the pain went away pretty quick. Well, after that, they have a schedule of, you have to go back a whole bunch of times for a long time for tests so they can see how your kidney's working, check for signs of rejection, and adjust your anti-rejection medications. The normal schedule was, best I remember, was for the first 3 months you had to go back 3 times a week to get blood drawn and tests, and then they'd cut it down to, for the next 3 months you had to go once a week, and then for the next year you go once a month if everything went well. My kidney transplant went as well as it possibly could have. I had 0 problems. They were able to adjust my medications down to a bare minimum right away, and I did so well, in fact, that I only went 3 times a week for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then they cut me down to once a week for the next couple of weeks, and after that they went ahead and cut me down to once a month, and they let my kidney doctors down here do the testing and the monitoring. So I was blessed, and as I'm fond of telling Art, Art, you got good parts.
As I hear tell, all the parts are crammed into one big part.
Fused.
Yeah, then the one big part is cut up into little pieces parts. And parts is parts.
So anyway, things went extremely well. One problem, though, is after the transplant, I weighed 160 pounds. And I got my appetite back. So within about a year, I was back up to about 200 pounds. And after about a year, one of the other side effects of the steroids that you have to take as anti-rejection medications is, if you're already prone to having type 2 diabetes, these anti-rejection medications will many times cause the diabetes to surface, especially if you gain extra weight. So I got type 2 diabetes. For the first 2 years, it was controlled well with just the oral medications. Then they had to put me on insulin. One of the things they didn't tell me about insulin, which I wish they had, and I found out the hard way, is that one of the major side effects of insulin is that it can cause you to gain weight in a hurry if you're not careful. Well, first 3 months I was on insulin, I gained 50 pounds, and I've been struggling with that ever since. But that's another video's worth of story. So basically, my kidney transplant worked perfectly. Everything went extremely well. After 5 years of no problems, they told me that if you haven't got any problems in the first 5 years, usually you won't have any. I didn't. I'm coming up this July on my 7th year with the kidney. So far, it's still been 0 problems. I pray that it continues. And once again, I thank God for having brought Art and his family into my life, not only for the kidney that he gave me, but for the friendship of some wonderful people that I would not have had otherwise. So Art and everybody in the family, once again, thank you. God bless you. This has been my kidney transplant story. I hope that you got something out of it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll try to help you. Goodbye till next time.